Dzień dobry and good morning to everyone out there, or proper greeting of the day wherever you may be in the world. Welcome back to another water drop. Today we're going to talk about importing observed rainfall into InfoWorks ICM. Who's this video for? Well, it's for water modelers who are trying to implement observed, not to be confused with design rainfall, into their model. The workflow for this video is that we're going to import some GIS layers, we're going to generate the boundaries for those storms, we're going to run our analysis. Before we begin, you may notice I said we're going to import observed and not designed rainfall. You may be wondering what the difference is. Observed or recorded rainfall data represents actual rainfall events. These events can cover a single storm or multiple storms over a recorded flow survey. Typically, recorded rainfall is used to calibrate a model and verify the system performance against data collected during those flow surveys or against flood records for large historical storms. In simpler words, you're verifying your model performed just like your system did during your flow monitoring period. Okay, so we have InfoWorks ICM open, and I already have my network I'm going to be working in uploaded. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and import my rain gauges. I'm going to right click on my network, hit GIS layer control. I'm going to go scroll down over here to shapefile, and I'm going to navigate to where I have that shapefile stored. So you can see my rain gauges have been uploaded in my GIS layer. I'm going to now click on my new object tool so I can create my rain gauges in the same order as they appear in my data. So my first rain gauge I draw on there has to be rain gauge 1 in my data. Rain gauge 2 has to match profile 2, so on and so forth. I'm going to repeat this process for all my rain gauges. Now that I have that done, I need to create my rain gauge boundaries. If I already had those boundaries created, I could just upload those the same way I just did with my rain gauges. I don't in this case, so I'm going to go ahead and have ICM create them. I'm going to start off by creating a new object. I'm going to change rain gauge to polygon. I'm going to draw a polygon that encompasses my entire analysis area. Now this doesn't have to be exact, but if a subcatchment falls wholly or partly outside of any rain gauge region, the simulation will fail, and we don't want that. Now we'll go back to our GeoPlan, select rain gauge data, and generate some boundaries, or commonly known as Thyssen polygons. We'll select that enclosing polygon we just created, and then ICM will create rain gauge regions based on weighted land averages and the location of the created rain gauges. Now if I click on a subcatchment and I hit that drop down to view its runoff properties, you'll see I have the Use Area Average Rain property selected. Using the Area Average Rainfall property to calculate the rainfall for the subcatchments produces a weighted average of rainfall from different gauges based on the area each gauge represents. So if I zoom in here, you'll see the subcatchment actually is in 2 different rain gauge zones. Using that option allows the rain to be split up proportionally across the subcatchment instead of just using one profile. To import the rain data, all I have to do is right click and select Import InfoWorks Rainfall Events. Notice how it says InfoWorks Format. We'll talk about that at the end of the video, but for now we're just going to go ahead and hit Generic CSV. So we'll go ahead and navigate to where that data is stored and hit Open. So we have our timestamps, we have our rain profiles. Those have to match the order in which we drew our rain gauges. So profile 1 should match rain gauge 1. Profile 2 should match rain gauge 2, so on and so forth. I'm also going to point out the units dialog here. Note that it's an intensity, not volume. So if your imported data is in volume, say inches, you'll need to convert that to inches per hour or your preferred intensity before you import it. And as with most things in ICM, you can customize your import settings and this mapping and save it as a configuration to save yourself from doing some repetitive work in the future. In this case, this is exactly how I want it, so no need to do anything. I can just hit OK. So after importing our event, We can now link that event to our boundaries in our GeoPlan menu. We'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll rename it afterwards. That way we know it's been linked. And we can check that that was done successfully by clearing out our boundaries and some of our background data. And whenever we click and drag our event onto our network, the boundary should reappear. Okay, so I have a new run dialog open. I'll go ahead and bring in my network. I can bring in my imported storm. And in this particular case, I already have dates in mind and a duration. If I wanted to change that, I'd do that right here. Also worth mentioning that any dates I have in my simulation should match the dates of any data that I've imported, including my rain event. Okay, so I have those results open. I'll go ahead and drop my event out there to give us our boundaries. So if we click on this guy, look at its rainfall, we'll get a profile. If I go over here, I should get a different one. And we can see that those are different. What about something right here? Now, this is where that average area comes into play. So if I look at this one compared to this one and this one, we should get 3 different views. I went ahead and prepared one. So it's kind of subtle, but if you look at this first leg of the storm, you can see it's different than the other two. Same thing for the second and the third. So we can see that that average area did in fact work, and we have our imported rain data ready to go in our model. All right, for the next part of this video, we're going to be looking at some gauge adjusted radar rainfall, or GAR for short. Process is a lot like working with actual rain gauges, but it's a little bit simpler. We're going to go back to our GIS layer control, navigate to where our shapefile is, and import that into our network. So this time when we go to our GeoPlan, instead of hitting generate boundaries, we're going to import from map data. We're going to select that shapefile we just uploaded, and we can delete it afterwards. And then we need to tell it which column to look for the profile name. So each one of these grids needs to have an accompanying rain profile. So grid 1 has to have profile 1, grid 2, profile 2, so on and so forth. And then just like we did before, we now need to link these boundaries to this rainfall event. Those are still in the same spot. We can rename it afterwards. That way we know it's linked and we can test it by clearing everything out. After that's done, we can start a new run using this data instead of our gauge data, and we can compare those results. Okay, we have our results loaded, and just like we did before, we can go ahead and drag and drop our rain event out here and see what's going on across those individual grids. So now if I click on a grid, it'll produce a hydrograph. If I click on a different grid, it will produce a different hydrograph. And just like before, we have our use average area rain option enabled. So that of course will give us a composite profile, just like it did earlier in the video. Another really cool feature about using this methodology is if I go over to my properties and themes, scroll down to the bottom and I hit view on the rainfall option, I'll then be able to visually see the rain falling across my different grids as I hit play on my simulation. So I've exported those storms. I'm going to go ahead and open one up. I mentioned earlier about what a CSV looks like when it's in an ICM format. This is what it looks like. So it may look a little busy, but it's not that hard to understand. We have our evaporations, our flows, all our different units are up here. We have our different profiles. Now, if I wanted to get creative and add stuff to here, I could mess around with a few settings and do that and then re-import it. So I could add, change this to 6. I could add that profile down here and then populate it however I saw fit. Stack this and add some evaporation, or anything that's ICM can model, and I encourage you to play with that on your own. Well, that does it for this video on importing observed rainfall into InfoWorks ICM. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. We're not that hard to get a hold of, and we love talking about these things. With that, don't step no corazo. Until next time, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.